Hi, what's going on, y'all? OJ back here with another video. Sorry I didn't upload yesterday. I didn't know what to upload, honestly. I completely ran out of ideas. But now that it's UFC 323 fight week, all right, I get to put my prediction video that I actually put some thought and tape study into. All right, I'm gonna try to predict every single fight as accurately as I can, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main event. Keep in mind, this is not financial advice. All right, please do not use this as information as to why you should gamble. But regardless, I'm just here to predict the fight results as accurately as I can. So without wasting any more time, let's jump right into the video. All right, so first fight we got Mohamed Naimov versus Mairon Santos. I'm gonna go with Mairon Santos. Now there is the risk of the grappling with Mohamed Naimov, but because he does like to shoot a couple of takedowns here and there. But the thing is, I don't think Mohamed Naimov is all that. All right. Outside of knocking out Jamie Malarkey, right? Welcome to the club. Everyone's knocked out Jamie Malarkey at some point in their career. I don't really recall a time where Mohamed Naimov's got a finish. All right, maybe there's one, but I especially do not remember a single finish Naimov's got who against someone who's currently on the roster, especially via submission or by ground and pound TKO. And that's what it ultimately comes down to. Because on the feet, I think Mayron Santos is the much more polished fighter by far. I think Mayron Santos can pick apart Muhammad Naimov over the course of 3 rounds. All right, I think there's gonna be a huge speed advantage here for Mayron Santos. Now, he did get taken down by Francis Marshall, but that's because Francis Marshall dropped him first and then secured the takedown right after as Mayron Santos was trying to get back up. So I think Mayron Santos is going to pick apart Muhammad Naimov, kind of school him on the feet a little bit, and it's going to be a pretty I would say it's a pretty lackluster fight. Maybe Marin Santos puts a little bit of mustard and tries to finish Muhammad Naimov, but it is kind of hard to finish Muhammad Naimov unless you're going by submission. And I see Marin Santos as more of a striking specialist. So I'm going to go with Marin Santos to pick apart Muhammad Naimov 30-27, and we move on. All right, now up next we got Mansur Abdul-Malik versus Antonio Trocoli. Yeah, I still don't think Mansur Abdul-Malik is all that. I mean, the guy was going life or death with Cody Brundage until the third round. But the thing is, the UFC is giving Abdul-Malik a step down in competition from Cody Brundage to Antonio Trocoli. Right? Genuinely, why Antonio Trocoli is on the roster at this point, I have no idea. All right, all the guy does is lose via embarrassing fashion. And I think he makes more money gambling on poker than he does fighting in the UFC. All right. I don't think Antonio Trocoli belongs on the UFC roster. Whereas even if you can criticize Mansur Abdul Malik for like his lack of output, especially against low level bums like Cody Brundage, like at the same time though, Abdul Malik he is good at finishing you if he can get the fight to the ground, whether he drops you or he takes you down. And I think that's what's ultimately come down to this fight. Right? I see Mansur Abdul Malik walking down Antonio Trocoli, either getting him down with a takedown or just dropping him and then finishing him off with ground and pound. Uh, because Antonio Trocoli is just god awful. So I'm gonna go with Mansur Abdul Malik to win this fight via round. I'm gonna say round one or two TKO. Most likely in the first round. Can go on to the second round, but either way, Antonio Trocoli is not gonna offer anything to Mansur Abdul Malik whatsoever. I'm gonna say the second round. Maybe Trocoli just like cockroaches his way through the first round, but eventually he's gonna get finished via ground and pound TKO. Okay, moving on though, we got Iwo Baraniewski versus Ibo Aslan. This is kind of a no-brainer to me. I'm gonna go with Iwo Baraniewski. I just don't think Ibo Aslan's all that. I mean, outside of winning against Hapa Sequeira, welcome to the club. Everyone's knocked out. Rafael Sequeira within like the first minute or so. Then he got a win over the Pleasure Man, I think, but that was kind of a lackluster fight prior to the finish in the third round. He did kind of go to a competitive-ish decision with Billy Elicana. Fight was really bad to begin with. And then other than that, he got finished by Ion Cutelaba, which hasn't aged all that well. All right. Now, Iwo Baraniewski, he hasn't really been tested by any sort of UFC level competition. Because he just fought on the Dana White's Contender Series this season, which was like 2 months ago. But the thing is, I think Iwo Baraniewski, he passes the eye test. Right? He's got nasty power in his hands. He can really pressure you when he needs to. He can actually throw combinations, which is something Ibo Aslan never does. Now, he has yet to be tested in the grappling, but at the same time, though, Ibo Aslan ain't the guy to test you in the grappling. So I think Iwo Baraniewski should knock out Ibo Aslan in the first round, just by walking him down and just kind of size mogging him. It's kind of a similar style to what Ibo Aslan does, but the difference is I think Iwo Baraniewski is a lot more polished. He's a lot more technical. He has more dynamic shot selection. I just think that Iwo Baraniewski is a better version of Ibo Aslan, so I'm gonna go with Iwo Baraniewski to finish Ibo Aslan in the first round. I'll say by a right hand. Moving on though, we got Edson Barbosa versus Jalen Turner. I'm gonna go with Jalen Turner on this one. Now, I do kind of worry because Jalen Turner, I don't think his head's all in the game yet. He did kind of quote unquote retire after losing to Ignacio Bahamondes via submission in the first round. Not a great look in hindsight, but at the same time, though, I just don't think Edson Barbosa should stick around in the first place. I think he's taken way too much damage. He didn't look good against Drakkar Close, and I would still put Jalen Turner above guys like Drakkar Close, who aren't really all that good to begin with. I think Edson Barbosa, the thing is, if this were like a 5 round fight where I know that Edson Barbosa is like maybe like a 2 or 3 years younger and he can kind of take some shots, I could pick him. But at this point, though, I just don't see the same grit. All right. And not to say that Edson Barbosa is a quitter. I just think that his body's kind of giving up on him. He's a lot slower than before. He doesn't have the boxing defense. You know, Leroy Murphy was kind of picking his head up apart like a bobblehead. And I think Jalen Turner, if he gets those same shots, he can put away Edson Barbosa via nasty ground and pound finish. So I'm gonna go with Jalen Turner to knock out Edson Barbosa within the first 2 rounds. It's gonna be pretty sad, but I think Jalen Turner, although I don't know whether or not he's gonna be committed to fighting as a UFC fighter, I think his skills are still good enough to knock out an out of prime Barbosa, which is why I'm gonna pick Jalen Turner to win this fight via knockout. Moving on though, we got Marvin Vettori versus Bruno Ferreira. Again, another no-brainer. I'm gonna go with Bruno Ferreira on this one. Now, I know there's the Abus Magomedov fight, where Abus Magomedov was about to put a grappling clinic on Bruno Ferreira. But the thing is, though, alright, I think Abus Magomedov's way better than Marvin Vettori. Like, when you look at Marvin Vettori's career, you gotta ask yourself, how the hell is he still in the top 15 in 2025? Right? This guy was getting picked apart by Robin Delizzi of all people. Right? You guys all know my opinions on Robin Delizzi. He got beat down by Brendan Allen in a one-sided fight. Right? Fair enough, Brendan Allen's a top 5 contender, but still, right? At the time, we didn't think that Brendan Allen was good, especially because Brendan Allen was coming off a lot of losses. He also got destroyed by Jared Cannonier. And yes, Jared Cannonier at the time was a legitimate top 5 contender. That's not aging too well, is it? All right. I think Marvin Vettori has taken too much damage. I don't see any sort of improvement out of Marvin Vettori. He just kind of comes in with the bumbling 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, over and over again. All right, there's no leg kicks. There's no change up in the combination. Like I've never seen Marvin Vettori level change to shoot a takedown. And even if he tries to grapple against Bruno Ferreira, I don't know whether or not Marvin Vettori can hold those positions against Bruno Ferreira for like a substantial long time. Because when has Marvin Vettori ever been able to do that? Right? Outside of when he fought Israel Adesanya, but still, even then, Israel Adesanya kind of schooled him on the feet for 5 rounds. I'm gonna say that Marvin Vettori might get knocked out this fight. Right? I know he has the iron chin. I know he just walks forward and just like tries to swarm you. But Bruno Ferreira's not the guy you want to test your chin against. All right, Bruno Ferreira's the guy that if you present your chin on a silver platter, he will knock you out. All right, and I can even see Bruno Ferreira being the one to initiate the grappling. So I'm gonna say that Bruno Ferreira just comfortably beats Marvin Vettori. I'm still debating on whether or not it's gonna be a submission or TKO. Like, fair enough, Brendan Allen could submit him. Uh, I'm gonna say that Bruno Ferreira is the first guy to knock out Marvin Vettori. All right, and even if he doesn't, he's still gonna win by just picking apart Marvin Vettori for 3 rounds because Marvin Vettori at this stage of his career is a walking punching bag. But either way, though, I'm very confident to say that Bruno Ferreira is gonna beat Marvin Vettori. I'm surprised the odds makers are saying otherwise because they have Bruno Ferreira as an underdog. I'm not sure why, but either way, though, Bruno Ferreira, I'm very comfortable to say that he's gonna beat Marvin Vettori, and he's gonna get Marvin Vettori out of the rankings by the end of 2025. All right, now up next we got Nazim Sadykhov versus Fares Ziam. This is a very interesting fight. This is a very interesting fight. I might go with Nazim Sadykhov on this one. I'm very 50-50 on this. Like, logically, you should go with Ferreira because he's just more proven against more contenders that are closer to the rankings. But the thing is, though, I think Ferreira, he is still vulnerable to someone who has the style of a Nazim Sadykhov, right? Because Ferreira doesn't have the knockout ability. I know he got to he got a knee up the middle against Matt Fravola to knock him out, but at this point, I think Matt Fravola's chin is cooked. And that was before he was putting on a grappling clinic against him. I don't see Ferreira being able to put on a grappling clinic against Nazim Sadykhov. If anything, I think Nazim Sadykhov's best attributes are his grappling. I mean, the guy submitted Evan Elder. He submitted Terrance McKinney, who, keep in mind, has a submission win over Ferreira. Now, I understand that Ferreira has massively improved on his grappling since then, but at the same time, though, I don't think Ferreira's really fought someone who likes to use their grappling as a very offensive tool. A lot of the time that Ferreira is able to showcase his grappling, it's against guys who never really shoot takedowns, who never really like to control the back and use their jujitsu. Ferreira is able to outscramble guys like that and keep dominant position. But Nazim Sadykhov is a very grimy and slick submission artist. And on the feet, too, he's got some pop in his shots. Now, I do think that Ferreira is kind of hard to hit. So I'm not sure whether or not Nazim Sadykhov can get the KO. But if this fight hits the ground, I believe that Nazim Sadykhov will be able to submit Ferreira. Right? I think that Ferreira, unless he can drag this fight out for 3 rounds, unless he is the one winning these scrambles, unless he's the one picking apart Nazim Sadykhov for 3 rounds straight, all right, he could win that way. But if it doesn't, then I see Nazim Sadykhov being the one to come out on top and just finishing Ferreira within 2 rounds. All right. Again, the only way Ferreira is gonna win this is if this fight goes the distance. So I'm gonna go with Nazim Sadykhov to win this fight via round 2 or 3 submission. All right, now moving on though, we got Macy Barber versus Karine Silva. I'm gonna go with Karine Silva on this one. It's because Macy Barber, I question whether or not she's committed to fighting as a UFC fighter. I mean, what has she done over the past 2 years? Pulled out against Aaron Blanchfield. Uh, she got fake tits. Other than that, though, I genuinely can't remember a single Macy Barber performance that was significant in the flyweight division. And when you watch Macy Barber's fights, the only reason she wins is because she just swings like a tard and tries to like throw big meaty hooks in the pocket. All right. I think Karine Silva, I know she lost to Viviane Araujo. That's not a good look. I know Karine Silva pulled guard at the end of the third round and kind of showed a very huge weakness in her cardio. But I think she's a lot more technical than Macy Barber, and that's what it simply comes down to. All right, the technique and also the power that Karine Silva carries is a lot better than a lot of Macy Barber's opponents in the past. So I think Karine Silva is just gonna find the better shots against Macy Barber. Can Macy Barber try to force a takedown? Yes, but in hindsight, who has she really been able to implement her grappling against? I don't really recall a time where she successfully got either a ground and pound TKO, a 30-27 control clinic, or a submission win. All right, that's never happened in Macy Barber's career. Macy Barber just kind of smudges you up against the cage while throwing aggressive, big, meaty hook shots that don't really hurt you in hindsight. So I'm gonna go with Karine Silva to pick apart Macy Barber. And plus, I think Karine Silva is more committed to her game in the UFC. So I think Karine Silva is gonna get this done. Picking apart Macy Barber for the first 2 rounds. Maybe Macy Barber tries to mount a comeback in the third, but by then, I think it's going to be too late, and I think Karine Silva will get the job done via 29-28 decision. All right, now up next, we got Terrance McKinney versus Chris Duncan. Now, low key, this is a kind of matchup where I would be enticed to pick Terrance McKinney, but I just can't doubt Chris Duncan anymore. Right? I kept doubting Chris Duncan for the longest time because he got destroyed by Manuel Torres. Blachowicz, fair enough, but Blachowicz ain't all that. I picked against him when he fought Jordan Vucenic, and then he submitted Jordan Vucenic via round 2 guillotine. I picked against him when he fought uh Mateusz Rebecki, but then he went to a 3-round war against Mateusz Rebecki and won by landing the more damaging shots. Like, it just feels like Terrance McKinney can win this because Terrance McKinney does have the ability to put you out. But the thing is, I've doubted Chris Duncan so many times that I've now genuinely become a fan of him. And I just can't doubt him anymore until he gets to a certain level of opposition. And I know that Terrance McKinney, he is very well rounded, especially in the grappling. I do think that's his best set of tools. But the problem is, Terrance McKinney is unbelievably chinny. And if you're going to go to a scrap with Chris Duncan, you have to trust someone to be able to put him away in the first round. And, like, yes, Terrance McKinney can do that, but I can also see Terrance McKinney getting clipped by the clubbing right hand and then getting folded up because Terrance McKinney's chin is made out of glass at this point. I'm going to go with Chris Duncan to badly drop Terrance McKinney and then finish him with ground and pound shots. I'm going to go with Chris Duncan to win this in the first round. All right. Can Terrance McKinney win this? Yes. All right. Terrance McKinney does very well against people who don't have the best technical abilities, which is someone like Chris Duncan who kind of just marauds forward and tries to put you out cold. But in hindsight, Terrance McKinney is not fighting the same level of opposition that Chris Duncan is. And that's what it simply comes down to. So I'm going to go with Chris Duncan to win in the first round. And I think Chris Duncan right after this is probably going to get a ranked opponent. Hopefully he does. But I can also see Chris Duncan getting hoed. Because I don't think the UFC is too fond of a guy like Chris Duncan. All right, now moving on though. We got Grant Dawson versus Manuel Torres. I'm going to go with Manuel Torres on this one. All right. I think first off, Grant Dawson, the UFC, like, they just don't like him, right? They're trying to get rid of Grant Dawson from the rankings. Like, why else would they give Grant Dawson Manuel Torres when Grant Dawson's on like a 3-fight win streak? Second off, I'm still worried about Grant Dawson and his distance management because he got fluke chinned by Bobby Green. And yes, I call it a fluke because Bobby Green doesn't really do that. But in hindsight, if you're getting chinned by Bobby Green in the first round via 1-2, what's to say that someone like Manuel Torres can't do that? Because I know that Bobby Green's very slick, right? And Manuel Torres doesn't have the same slickness that a Bobby Green does, but he is a bulldozer of a human being. He will try to destroy you if you do not put anything that he needs to respect, like when Ignacio Bahamondes repeatedly found the right hand counter. Like, other than that, though, like, Manuel Torres has nothing to really fear for, in my opinion. So I think that Manuel Torres is gonna have a field day beating the crap out of Grant Dawson in the first round. Now, if this fight goes past the first round, can Grant Dawson implement his grappling and just kind of piece up Manuel Torres and ragdoll him as the fight progresses? Yes. But at the same time, though, I worry for Grant Dawson, all right? Because why are you getting fluke chinned by Bobby Green? Like, I know you've improved massively since then, Grant Dawson, and it kind of showed in the Carlos Diego Ferreira fight. But at the same time, though, like Carlos Diego Ferreira, I know I picked him to win, but he doesn't have that one punch knockout power, especially early on. Whereas Manuel Torres will force you to fight if you do not shoot a takedown and get it successfully against him. So I'm gonna go with Manuel Torres to bulldoze Grant Dawson, and I think Manuel Torres is gonna find himself in the rankings of the lightweight division by the end of this event. All right, now up next, though, we got Jan Blachowicz versus Bogdan Gushkov. I'm gonna go with Jan Blachowicz on this one. I know that Bogdan Gushkov's good, but if your plan is to knock out Jan Blachowicz, because let's be honest, that's the only way Bogdan Gushkov knows how to win fights, you're not gonna find that much success. All right, Jan Blachowicz is very tricky to hit. I know he's past his prime; he's like 41 years old. But even against Carlos Ulberg, who's gonna be the next title challenger for Alex Pereira, it was a very close fight. Like, Carlos Ulberg had a very hard time finding his shots against Jan Blachowicz. And yes, to be fair, Carlos Ulberg doesn't have the same sort of pressure that a Bogdan Gushkov has. But still, though, I just think it's very hard to knock out Jan Blachowicz in the first round. And that's kind of what Bogdan Gushkov's made his career out of, which is knocking people out within the first 2 rounds. I can even see Jan Blachowicz implementing a grappling game because Bogdan Gushkov, his grappling is not really tested. Right, Billy Elikana kind of controlled him for a round. Uh, he got submitted by Volkan Oezdemir. Fair enough, it was short notice. But I do believe that Jan Blachowicz is a overall better MMA grappler than Volkan Oezdemir. So I think Jan Blachowicz has the tools to make this a very gritty fight where Bogdan Gushkov is really going to have to think on his toes rather than just finding the button on the chin and knocking his opponent out in the first 2 rounds. And I think Jan Blachowicz will take Bogdan Gushkov into deep waters, especially if he uses his grappling early into the fight. I'm going to go with Jan Blachowicz to kind of crafty vet his way through for a 29-28 win. Maybe Bogdan Gushkov has some success early on, but as the fight progresses, I think Jan Blachowicz will be able to take over with his experience and just kind of check Bogdan Gushkov's grappling. All right, so I'm going to go with Jan Blachowicz to win this fight 29-28 via crafty vet maxing. Moving on, though, we got Henry Cejudo versus Peyton Talbot. Now, when I watch film for these two fighters, I'm feeling that Peyton Talbot wins. All right. The film tells me that Peyton Talbot has the style to beat Henry Cejudo. Peyton Talbot is a lot bigger of a striker. All right. He hits with crazy power. He does have some dynamic shot selection. He's very tall for the division, so it's gonna be very hard for Henry Cejudo to pick his shots. And on the ground, I know he got taken down by Raoni Barcelos, but at the same time, though, I don't see Henry Cejudo having the same sort of jujitsu control. Henry Cejudo doesn't even use takedowns all that often in his fights because he just kind of lets them go immediately after taking someone down. Like I've never really recalled a moment where Henry Cejudo kind of won his fights via hoverboard maxing and controlling someone from top guard. But the thing is, though, like I told you all those reasons, but at the end of the day, I think Henry Cejudo is going to win because he's just fought much better level opposition. Right? Peyton Talbot, why are you getting fraud checked by Raoni Barcelos? All right, now I know that Raoni Barcelos is really good, but Raoni Barcelos ain't top 10 to 5 caliber. Maybe he is, but I doubt it. I think Raoni Barcelos is like a perfect top 15-ish level opponent. He went to a close fight with Felipe Lima. Again, you could say the same things for Felipe Lima, but at the same time, though, I think Henry Cejudo's a lot better than someone like a Felipe Lima just by skill. And that's the thing too. He's made it very close with a lot of top level fighters. Now that doesn't necessarily make you good, but if you're consistently making it close with guys like Song Yadong, Merab Dvalishvili, Aljamain Sterling, like I do think there's just levels in the bantamweight division, and I don't know whether or not Peyton Talbot is really past that level. Because keep in mind, the guy is getting a top 10 opponent coming off one win against Felipe Lima. And before that, he got fraud checked by Howdy Barcel straight up. I'm going to go with Henry Cejudo, crafty betting this up. I can see Henry Cejudo shooting takedowns, maybe not establish that much control with it, but it's going to keep Peyton Talbot occupied. He's not really gonna know what to do in terms of like as the fight progresses, and he just keep having to deal with Henry Cejudo's level changes. Now, can Peyton Talbot clip Henry Cejudo in the chin and drop him badly? Yes, but when's the last time Henry Cejudo's really got clipped? It's been a while. So I think Henry Cejudo in the 3 rounder, I do like his odds. I think Henry Cejudo will be able to pick more of the output than Peyton Talbot at least. I think Peyton Talbot's gonna have a hard time finding his shots because when you watch his fight with Felipe Lima, it's almost like his striking regressed a little bit because he overly focused on his grappling a lot. But either way, though, I'm gonna go with Henry Cejudo to win this fight. Uh I'm gonna say 29-28 decision. Alright, I'm gonna say 29-28 decision, and we're gonna move on to the feature fight of the card. Alright, now up next though, we got Brandon Moreno versus Tatsuro Taira. I'm gonna go with Tatsuro Taira on this one. Alright, now this is a very tricky fight to pick. And if you're picking Brandon Moreno to win this fight, I completely understand it. The thing is though, it's a 3-round fight. Now, in a 5-rounder, I'd be very confident in Brandon Moreno, but in a 3-rounder, I can see Tatsuro Taira doing enough with his back control in order to win the majority of the fight. Because Tatsuro Taira, he's very hard to knock out. I know Brandon Moreno's a very slick striker. He's got very nice long punches, and Tatsuro Taira kind of got exposed in his fight with Brandon Rival because he couldn't defend long punches. But I think that Taira's learned from that fight since that he can't just keep his head in the center line and just absorb all the shots. And the thing is, Brandon Moreno, he's got more pop than Brandon Rival, but he doesn't have the output. So I do think that Tatsuro Taira will have more opportunities to set up his own shots. And especially in the grappling, I think Tatsuro Taira will be able to control Brandon Moreno for at least a majority of the round via backpacking. Right? Tatsuro Taira's grappling is so nasty. His back control is like absolutely insane. Uh, I think Brandon Moreno's really gonna struggle against someone like that. Like, keep in mind, like Brandon Moreno, he doesn't really use his grappling a lot. I know he's very good defensively and he can scramble, but that's the thing though. You have to be able to reverse positions consistently. And I think Brandon Moreno's very content with just defending. Right? He's not like a Brandon Rival where he like scrambles all over the place, going for submissions here and there. And that's kind of how Brandon Rival was able to beat Tatsuro Taira every time Taira was able to establish a dominant position against him. Because Brandon Rival is a heck of a scrambler. I don't see that same ability from Brandon Moreno, however. Right? Brandon Moreno's more on like, oh, we gotta follow the books, just defend the hands when he takes the back. Uh make sure to not give up your back in the first place. Like he's very much more like textbook defense than a Brandon Rival is. So I'm gonna go with Tatsuro Taira to kind of backpack Brandon Moreno for throughout the majority of the fight. I can see Brandon Moreno as the fight progressing, just kind of picking apart Tatsuro Taira, but I don't see a finish, and that's ultimately what it comes down to. All right, Brandon Moreno doesn't have the best finishing potential unless he's getting a rear naked choke via submission, and you're not rear naked choking Tatsuro Taira. So I'm gonna go with Tatsuro Taira to win this fight. 29-28, 30-27 via grappling masterclass decision. Moving on, we got Alessandro Pantoja versus Joshua Van. I'm gonna go with Pantoja on this one. I just think that he's too good. I know that I picked Joshua Van to beat Brandon Rival. I know I just kind of praised Tatsuro Taira for going to a close decision with Brandon Rival, whereas Joshua Van clearly beat him. The thing is, though, I think Joshua Van's style matches up against Brandon Rival very well. Like, I don't know why Brandon Rival didn't shoot takedowns of his own in hindsight because he was kind of getting picked apart on the feet. Whereas Alexandre Pantoja, I don't think he's gonna give Joshua Van that opportunity. Right? Like, I know that Joshua Van has very good takedown defense, but that's against like pure grappling specialists, like a Ray Saruya, who keep in mind doesn't even have the same level of grappling that a Pantoja has in the first place. Whereas Pantoja, on the other hand, I think he's much more experienced than Joshua Van. He will be able to mix up his martial arts when the time comes. On the feet too, I think Joshua Van will have to worry about the power of Alexander Pantoja. Like I know that Van's a lot more slick, but at the same time though, Pantoja, he is a champion for the reason. Right? This guy went to war with Brandon Moreno and he almost finished Brandon Moreno in the first round. I just think there's too many things for Joshua Van to worry about over the course of 5 rounds. So I'm gonna go with Alexandre Pantoja to kind of just pick apart Joshua Van. Like, can Joshua Van have success on the feet and clip Alexandre Pantoja? Yes. But the thing is, though, Joshua Van doesn't have the knockout potential to uh allow Pantoja to have respect out of him. I think Joshua Van's gonna have a very hard time getting Pantoja off of him. Pantoja's gonna maraud forward with his granite-like chin and just kind of size mock Joshua Van throughout the fight. And eventually, I could see Pantoja submitting Joshua Van. So I'm gonna go with Alexandre Pantoja to submit Joshua Van. Uh, in the third or fourth round, I can see it kind of playing out like the Kai Kara France fight. Albeit, I think Joshua Van is a lot better than Kai Kara France. But still, though, I don't know how Joshua Van's gonna win this fight unless he goes all 5 rounds or he's the one to knock out Pantoja. But I think I can trust Pantoja to get a finish more than I can trust Joshua Van. So I'm gonna go with Alexandre Pantoja to submit Joshua Van in the third and fourth round. Moving on to the main event, we got Merab Dvalishvili versus Petr Yan. Now, when I first heard about this fight, I was deluding myself into picking Petr Yan to win this fight. However, upon watching tape on both fighters, I don't know how Petr Yan wins this. Right? Like I just don't know how Petr Yan's gonna find success Because the thing is, Peter Yan, I love him to death, but he is very stationary. That is the one criticism I have against Peter Yan's style. All right, Peter Yan likes to catch punches with his high guard and try to counter back. And that could work because Merab Dvalishvili does leave his chin open. But that's also why Merab Dvalishvili shoots takedowns a lot. Because Peter Yan loves to cover up with the high guard a lot. Like what happened in their first fight. Oh. I just don't know how Peter Yan's gonna put away Merab either. Like Peter Yan, he doesn't have the crazy knockout power that someone like a O'Malley or a Song Yadong has. And even those guys weren't able to really hit Merab Dvalishvili with anything clean. I think Merab Dvalishvili, he's just gonna be able to work his takedowns a lot. All right, like Peter Yan, again, very stationary. He's His hips are wide open because he's in that high guard boxing stance. And I think Merab Dvalishvili is just gonna throw too much for Peter Yan for him to really be able to find his reads. Like, do I think it's gonna be as one sided as the first fight? Not necessarily. I do think that Peter Yan's wrestling overall has gotten better since the first fight, but I don't think it's enough to where I can say that, oh, he's gonna be able to comfortably deal with Merab Dvalishvili's pressure, like what Umar Nurmagomedov did in the first 2 rounds. So I'm gonna go with Merab Dvalishvili to win this fight. I still love Peter Yan. I will still be rooting for him. I hope Peter Yan wins because he's my little Pookie Bear in the bantamweight division. But I just think Merab Dvalishvili is too good. All right, no amount of copium delusion is gonna convince me that Merab Dvalishvili is gonna lose anytime soon. So I'm gonna go with Merab to kind of beat Peter Yan via decision. I do think it's gonna be closer than the first fight, though. Maybe it's gonna be like a 48-47, but I don't see Peter Yan doing enough to win at least 3 of the rounds, nor do I see Peter Yan knocking out Merab Dvalishvili. So I'm gonna go with Merab Dvalishvili to cap off the final pay-per-view of the year via decision. Okay, that's gonna be it for this video. If you guys want to see more videos like this, please make sure to like and subscribe so we can get this channel monetized. Otherwise, though, leave a comment down below who you guys have for the winners of this card. All right, this is the last pay-per-view of 2025 and possibly in ESPN because we're going to be moving on to Paramount starting next year. All right, I'm really excited for the Paramount deal, but anyways though, leave a comment down below what you guys think, and outside of that, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.